So basically, like in the past few months, I've sort of become like an agent for Lü, like for like commercial and stuff. And people keep asking me, like, say, how did I make Lü so successful overseas? But but every time I get asked questions, but I didn't. It's basically these two guys. One's called Hookgrip and one's called ATG. They've been doing it since way before weightlifting was a thing. And I just thought because we could schedule a podcast. Obviously, Gregor can't be here today, but I just something to explain to the Chinese audience how you guys became what you are now, really.
Yeah. I mean, where do you want me to start? Very beginning?
Yeah, like how did Hookgrip start?
It really started. I guess the best way I could say it started is I discovered CrossFit in 2009, and it wasn't something where I got into CrossFit because of weightlifting. Like, I got into CrossFit because I was living on a small island in the Caribbean that had 3 gyms on it in it total. And so I just Googled, gym and then the name of the island I was living on, and 3 things popped up, and 2 of them were kind of Globo gyms and 1 was a CrossFit. So I went to that CrossFit because it just sounded more interesting. I got introduced to weightlifting that way. And then I kind of just got interested in it, and I got interested in weightlifting and a bunch of other things. I got interested in powerlifting, strongman, other sorts of something called Highland Games. If you've ever heard of Highland Games, it's like another strength sport kind of. And then I got into, actual CrossFit the sport. I would watch CrossFit the sport. So I kind of got into all of them, but I really found weightlifting was by far the most difficult to follow. Like with strongman, it was pretty easy. There were a lot of resources. Same thing with CrossFit. I mean, there were, I would say, less resources than there are now. 2009 was kind of a different era for a lot of these sports compared to 2022. But I just realized, hey, no one was covering weightlifting at all. And it wasn't so much that I was looking for a business to start. It was more so that I was just looking to follow weightlifting. So I was like, I guess I'll just go to the meets, because there's literally no live streams, there's nothing online. So I was like, all right, I guess I'll just go. So I started going, and I'd always been interested in photography. So I was kind of like, well, I might as well take some pictures while I'm there to kind of like remember it, maybe like put some up on social media, and maybe, it'll just be like a fun side project. And then it kind of expanded from there. So I'm really, a lot of times I like to say that I'm kind of like a weightlifting fan that let things spiral out of control.
I had a similar story, actually. Like, I think I only started training like gym around 2015. Then I was doing a typical bro split: Monday chest, Wednesday back, Friday, and then you skip legs. Then I think it was around 2018, my friend was like, you should try CrossFit because it's more functional. And I went to the local CrossFit gym, and the first day they were doing snatch. But obviously, like, how CrossFit gym work, they start with like a technical movement, then they move on to the cardio stuff. I really hated the cardio bit, but I found the snatch was quite interesting. Then I started searching for tutorials online. Then I discovered you. I think it was Gregor's video at first. It was one of Lü's snatch videos, and then I realized, hold on, like, how come I didn't know that China is the best in weightlifting? And considering I'm a Chinese and I work in the media. And then I started watching all the videos online of you guys posting. And I think by that time, the only person who did tutorials was Zach. And
only person who did what?
Tutorials.
Oh, tutorial. Okay.
Yeah, it was Zach. Zach was he did quite a lot of tutorials, and the other guy, what's his name? The Ukraine guy.
Oh, Karakti?
Yeah. I can never pronounce his name correctly. Then I just started literally like mimicking their movements. Then my form went really bad. I never say it was 1 year when I went back to China. I found one of those internet famous coach, and I think I did a clean or like a snatch line in front of her. She was mortified by my movement. And she's like, where did you learn this from? So I just watched a lot of YouTube videos, like of what, and I showed her the video, and she was mortified by them. How do you pronounce his name again?
Taraki.
Taraki, yeah. She was mortified by her form. Like, you should not do this. This is wrongly in terms of Chinese weightlifting. And then she went back and corrected all my form. And that's when I first just got introduced into weightlifting, but my form was still pretty bad then. And then it was, I think it was 2019, when Lü broke the world record with a broken lower back. And then that's the first time I watched the competition from start to finish. I was like, oh my God, this is actually quite entertaining. Well, obviously I think the 2009 was probably the most interesting to watch game for like last decade. Well, that's probably a personal opinion. Then
maybe for Chinese, I don't know.
Not
for me.
Not for you.
Yeah.
Then I think it was a month later, I started work. Well, around that time, I also was working for one of the Chinese state medias, and every day would come in with like a proposal for story. And around the same time, Alex messaged me saying, "So you're a journalist, right?" I was like, "Yeah." "And you're based in the UK?" I was like, "Yeah." "Do you want to come to Switzerland and film Lü?" I was like, "Yeah, why not? This is like, you just started weightlifting. It's like, I know, it's like, imagine if I just started basketball and you get to meet LeBron or something." Then I went to Switzerland and I met up with him. It was not the first time I met Gregor and Seb.
Mm-hmm.
But before I went there, I proposed to my editor. I was saying, if you send me to Switzerland to do this weightlifting story, I guarantee you I will bring you back the most viewed YouTube video on your social media channel like ever. And to my response, my editor called saying, "Well, for weightlifting, it's a bit niche, isn't it?" I was like, "Fine, I'll go by myself. Whatever I posted, I will post on my own channel. You guys are not going to get anything out of this." And that's literally the weekend when I started Squat Journalist. It was basically just saying to my editor that the weightlifting story will have better view than any other stories we did in like the past year.
I mean, it might, just because it's not so much that weightlifting is popular, but it's more so that the Chinese weightlifters are popular, and there's not that many good in-depth videos. There's kind of, and I'm not trying to talk shit about like CCTV or whatever, but there's kind of like those short segments that CCTV does where they go to the training hall and they do like a 5-minute segment with like short interviews. But whenever I watch the translated versions of those, they're always like very generic. It's kind of like, I'm hoping to do well at the Asian Games, and blah blah blah. The whole team is prepared very well, and this, and it's like they never go in depth. It's always content that's meant for like a general audience. It's meant for like your average Chinese. It's not meant for your weightlifting fan. So I think that just because you'd be going and doing something that's more meant for actual weightlifting fans, not for the average person, I think that would just make it popular. Because at the time of that Switzerland meet, I mean, even now there's not that much, but at the time of the Switzerland meet, there was like no really good content for weightlifting fans on like Chinese weightlifting, in my opinion. It was all kind of generic, average person sort of content, other than actual weightlifting videos. Obviously,
I know what you mean. That's when I thought, like, even though when I've made my first video, which is like, this is just one coincidence, I probably never should do it again. But then like got loads of comments saying like, you have inside access to the Chinese team and you can get information that nobody else can. And then I thought, I spoke to the manager from Lü Xiaojun Barbell. I was saying, can we agree on some form of payment, because it is quite expensive to travel to China. If you want me to cover these events, then we agreed on a sum, and that's when I started doing it continuously. Yeah, and obviously, because I started learning weightlifting well, so it'll be quite interesting to get some information just for personal improvement. And also, like, a lot of these guys are quite fun to talk to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I've always
you
thought
probably
it
won't
would
know
be a
about
lot of.
it. Yeah.
Well, I've always thought it would be a lot of like fun to basically be able to really have like a conversation with some of like the elite Chinese weightlifters, because the thing is like to us, sometimes the Chinese weightlifters, but it's not just Chinese, but to us, sometimes people where there's like a big language barrier come off as
Yeah, of
a little bit
course. Yeah.
like they come off as unfriendly.
Yeah.
But I know they're not unfriendly people. It's just that I don't speak any Chinese. They don't speak any English. Whereas like for me, I speak a good amount of Spanish, at least certainly not fluently, but I speak enough to talk to the Spanish lifters and interact with them. And like they're all so nice because I can kind of communicate with them. So I've always thought it would be fun to like know enough Chinese to be able to communicate, but I don't.
Are they aware who you and Gregor are, like the Chinese athletes?
I can't tell because I've met them so many times
Yeah.
in training halls, and like
Yeah.
they obviously know, like if they see me standing there with a camera,
Yeah.
they know, oh, there's that guy who shows up with a camera to our training session. So they know that, like, they know my face in that sense. Like, if you put me in a lineup and said, which one's the camera guy from training halls, I think they could pick me out. But I don't think that they really know what we do or, any of those details. Even though I've met them in like more, I would say like not super crowded situations too. Like one example is at the 2015 World Championship, which was in Houston. Unfortunately, both of those guys did not have good meets there. But Lü and Tian Tao were in a hotel room with the guy from On Top. And I went to the guy, basically I was talking with the guy from On Top because at that point we had ordered shoes from them. And so I basically said, hey, can I come talk to you at some point to basically discuss some business details? And so, he told me, okay, come to my room. This is my room number. Come at this time. So I went to his room, and those two guys were just in there hanging out, like on the bed, because I guess they're friends with each other. And so it was like the four of us just hanging out in the room while I talked to the guy from Anta in English for like 45 minutes. And they're just laying there on their phones on the bed, just like,
Plastic.
goofing off.
Yeah.
Like, who knows, on WeChat or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, this was before like TikTok, so they weren't on like Douyin or whatever it's called over there.
Yeah.
But they we were just hanging out there for 45 minutes. But then it's funny because like the next day I see them in the training hall, I wave hi and they pretend like they don't know me. So it's like I don't really know. Like I can't tell if it's something where like they just meet a lot of people and they just forget people, or maybe like because they don't talk to me, they don't remember anything about me. You know what I mean? So I really couldn't say. But at this point, I would say they're friendlier and they're more aware of who I am. But I don't think they know much about.
Yeah, I don't think you've been formally introduced. That's the thing.
Oh, it's like just because Tian Tao eventually made an Instagram account. At the time, he didn't have one, but he has sent me messages on Instagram onto the Hookgrip account that have indicated that he has some idea of what we do, because he's like sent me videos and he's like, hey, could you publish this and like mention me to help boost my following? So he has some idea of what Hookgrip is, but because Lü is not as on Western social media at all.
He's not on any social media.
Well, he has the one like a TikTok account in China.
I run all of them, so.
No, but like I'm trying to think, like going back even like a few years, he had like a personal one that he would post a lot of like personal videos on.
He had Weibo for a bit, which is like the Twitter equivalent in China. He posted.
Yeah, no. He had the TikTok account too. What's it called in China again?
Douyin.
Yeah. He had a Douyin. He had like a personal Douyin account.
He gave me that after the Olympics. because
I was gonna say, because like
he just
a few
didn't have
years
time to
ago,
post
it was-
anything.
yeah, but a few years ago,
I
he
think
was
you
posting more
you might
personal
be
stuff.
confusing with his wife's, because his wife is very active on Douyin. Like all the training video we got was posted by his wife.
Okay, maybe it's his wife's account. I don't know, but
Yeah.
Gregor.
She had that account for ages. It could be confusing. Like I thought that was Lu's account at first, but then it turned out to be his wife's.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've met his wife a few times. Like a few people
Yeah.
have introduced me to her and stuff like that. She was a really good weightlifter back in the day, but she stopped before I started taking videos and photos.
I think it was just around the time. I think her last competition was in 2009 in Gaoyang, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then she retired. Oh yeah, I should probably like.
She did like
if-
135 at like 63 or something. It's pretty good.
Yeah, she got bronze, right? I think. Can't remember.
I don't remember, but I mean, she's a legit. Did legit numbers.
Yeah, and yeah, I think I should next time if you do come to Chongqing in November. I'll say
Do
November.
you think it's gonna? I think it has to get moved unless China changes the COVID rules.
I mean, they just hosted Olympics and that was fine. So they probably will come up with something if like media needs to come through. Like, so for the Olympics, I think all the journalists had to go in there and quarantine for 2 weeks, and then they're free to roam around the village. Then afterwards, if you stay in China, you have to quarantine for 2 more weeks. But if you go back to which country you came from, then you're fine. Well, that depends on the quarantine rule of the country you came from.
Yeah, I mean, it's just such a like hassle to hold anything in China right now because of all the COVID rules. So I think they would move it.
Mm.
I don't know. I talked to some people that made me think that they are going to move it, but I think that they won't officially announce any move until the Junior World. Basically, at Junior Worlds in Greece in early May, they'll hold a congress, and they'll have like executive board meetings and such. But I think they'll have to move it unless there's like less strict rules.
No, that's why I had a chat with the CWA the other day. They were quite determined to that it's going to happen. Then we don't know.
I mean,
because I know what you mean. Like the COVID rule in China right now is pretty strict, unless something's happening like later on this year, like they ease it up. I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, first of all, I would love to have the meet in China on a bunch of different levels.
Mm.
I mean, I actually really like visiting China.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's really convenient once you have like I managed a few years ago. I managed to get like a Chinese bank account, so now I can use like WeChat Pay and Alipay.
Yeah.
And that whole system with everything from like Didi and all the different, like if you have the right apps and you have like a Chinese phone number and a Chinese bank account, everything in China is like super easy and convenient and like easy to like the train systems are really great and like everything's fine. Like I really like it. The thing that I'm worried
everything
about
from WeChat basically.
Yeah, everything through WeChat, basically. Now, there's a couple things that are like a little difficult. Like some of the food apps are a little difficult if you can't like read Chinese.
Yeah, that's a Western entrepreneur. He saw the gap in the market. He did launch his own delivery app, but translated all the menu, and he marked it up by like 60%, I think. And the people still went for it because it was the only delivery app in English in China.
Yeah, I mean, I would do that because the delivery wasn't that expensive. So what's 60%? It's not, in order to
it's not expensive. Yeah, it's still probably cheaper than Uber Eats or like Deliveroo, whatever.
Yeah, so I like all those aspects. The thing I don't like is like I don't really like the Chinese Federation is like not really that friendly to outside media. And I don't mean like
I don't think that's
American.
It's just to any media.
No, that's what I mean. When I say outside media, I mean like not CCTV or state media.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
it's CCTV or state media, they're like, okay, great. If you're
yeah.
anyone else, they're like, no, we don't want you, we don't need you, etc.
I know.
Which
I had
think
I had the same problem. Like I try to get, it's even a problem for me to get a press pass to the events.
Were you talking about the national games or national?
Yeah, the national
championships?
games.
National games is super tough because that's kind of like above even like the weightlifting federation.
Yeah,
people.
yeah. You had to go
You know,
through, go to the local government to get a access to it.
Yeah, that's a whole different level. That's kind of the same issue that you would have. Like, you'll probably have a bunch of problems at the Asian Games if you go to that. Like the Asian Games are going to be an absolute nightmare when it comes to media.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Because it'll be even worse than the national games.
Yeah,
I think, in terms of like media access. Like, I'm not even considering going to China for the Asian Games. Like, it's not even something even remotely.
So during the national games, there was like a bunch of these volunteers, and they would come to me and say, stop filming because you're not allowed to use professional filming equipment. And then I basically bribed them with like sweets and oh, what was it? Yeah, I bribed them with fruits and sweets. I was just like, don't give me, don't. I was, and then eventually because so Lü didn't compete in the national game.
Yeah, because because of like injury.
Yeah, and he gave me his pass. And then every time, like if some guy came to stop me, I would show them Lü's pass. So they would just walk away.
Okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell that you were not him.
The worst part was like when I walked through security, and I think I had the pass hang on me, and one of the volunteer was like, "Oh, you're Lü?" I was like, "No. Can I have a picture with you?" But I'm not Lü. And she's like, do you even watch weightlifting? She was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." It's like, he just gave me his pass. Then I think she had an awkward moment.
Mm-hmm. I had a lot of harassment at the 2017. I went to the 2017 National Games in Tianjin.
Yeah.
And they definitely were not happy with like us being there. And by they, I don't necessarily mean the weightlifting federation. I'm not even sure if the weightlifting federation like knew that we were there.
Yeah.
But by that I mean like the security people were like very uneasy with the idea of these like white people showing up at this meet where there were literally no like I was the only white person there every single day. Like I would just look around the crowd, like every single person. So I really stuck out.
A white person came into China with a camera.
Well, no, what I did was so the first day they let me in with the camera, no problem.
Yeah.
Then the second day, the first day I was like, oh wow, this is actually pretty easy.
Yeah.
No problem. And now I didn't bring in like tripods and whatever. I was just kind of like hand holding in the stands with like a smaller camera, like a GH5 or something.
Mm-hmm.
But then the second day they said, oh, no cameras. So I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And basically I had to bring the camera back to the hotel, and then I went back and just watched the competition without a camera. So I didn't take any videos the second day. So I don't have any videos of like the 53s and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then what I did after that was I just gave the camera to a Chinese person. They went through, and then once we were past security, they just gave it back to me, and it was fun.
That's fair. I mean, yeah, so, I had a few problems like later on in the days. Like one of the managers came. I think some like because the volunteer will rotate around. Like I built quite good relationship with two of the volunteers because they said I'll promise a signature from Lü, and they were fine. They were giving me a very good time. They were asking, "Oh, do you need me to bring you water? Do you need any help carrying the tripod?" I was like, no, you're fine. Just make sure that nobody bothers me when I'm filming. And I think one of the last day, I think it was can't remember whose competition. I think it was Lü, because he announced his back out from the competition last minute. So that competition was very full, and the people were carrying banners. And there's a rule saying you're not allowed to hang banners on the railings. And then security came in and they gave me a hard time. And then, but by that time, the volunteer had already known me that they were helping to talk to security. I'm like, oh no, he's done it for days. That don't worry, he's not going to like start any troubles. And that's how I managed to get pretty much every single game.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that press passes at Worlds would be different just because you have people from all over the world coming in. So it's kind of a different situation. And the other thing about Worlds is that it's not really a Chinese run meet. You know, at Worlds, it's technically the IWF's meet, and like the Chinese are just acting as the host.
Yeah.
And so final say on things like media passes at Worlds really is the IWF, not the Chinese.
Yeah.
Whereas at the Chinese national or even the national game, you know, kind of what the Chinese say goes, sort of, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like I said, I'm a little worried because I know things would be I know with COVID and China already being kind of a difficult place. Yeah, they'll make up rules like, you know, we had a bunch of rules in Uzbekistan even for Worlds this past year where like we had to only stand on certain parts of the outside of the training hall, stuff like that. So I know
the junior.
No, at Senior Worlds in Tashkent.
Oh, sorry, you went
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know, even that was difficult. So I can and Tashkent, no one cares about anything there with regards to COVID. So, you know, I can only even imagine how much of a pain in the ass it'll be in China with COVID and just Chinese kind of apprehension about outside media. So, you know, it's kind of one of these things where it's like, I like the idea of China in some ways, and I hate it in other ways. I'm talking about purely in terms of hosting a big meet, you know. So I would hope that it would be okay. You know, some of the people I've talked to from the Chinese Federation, I would say the current version of the Chinese Federation are friendlier than some of the ones I talked to in like 2015, 2016.
Yeah.
The ones in 2015 and 2016 like hated me because of like Coach Ma basically talked a whole bunch of, you know, I don't know.
Not drama.
I don't know exactly what was said, but all I know is that I never did anything bad to any of these people, and they would send me angry emails about things.
Did Coach badmouth you or?
Well, like I said, I don't really know because I don't know what was said, but the only thing I could think of, and based on a few of the comments that were in various, you know, angry emails from those prior versions of the CWA, I could only imagine that it was things that Coach Ma or someone who worked with him or whatever said, but I really can't know for sure because no one ever gave me like a transcript of the conversation. But as far as I can tell, that's probably what happened. But either way, like I said, the newer leadership and people that got involved now.
I praised you and Gregor in front of them.
Oh, that's good. Thanks.
Like
I don't know.
Yeah. I was like,
you know,
like I don't know. Like I basically said, how come there's two Western guys doing our promotion for the weightlifting team when none of us is doing it? Like, well, how far Lü and like 10 times Shi Zhiyong has become today is basically the combined effort of these two guys. And you got why shouldn't we welcome them more?
What did they say?
It said a bunch of things, but then it said like basically in the future they're gonna like put me in charge of communicating with you guys, so like nothing goes wrong.
Okay. I mean, the one thing that I always emphasize, because in 2019 in Ningbo, we had a very interesting situation where, you know, we went to the Asian Championships in Ningbo, and it was like maybe April 2019.
Yeah.
And we were told basically before we got there that there was no media allowed.
Yeah.
So we basically showed up being after being told there was no media. And the reason we showed up anyway was because the IWF said, oh, well, if you can't get in, we'll help you get in. And we were basically like, I don't want to just not show up to Asians because the Chinese Federation said there's no media. So our thought process was, well, we'll just show up, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, and whatever.
Yeah.
So we show up and we go to pick up a media pass, and they're like, there is no media pass. There's no media.
Yeah, that's exactly what the Federation told me. There is no media pass.
Exactly, there's no media pass. What are you talking about?
Confusing compared to like every other competition I went to. Like, you get an application form on the website, but not in China.
Exactly. So we go. There's no media, and so then we're standing there and we're talking to someone from the Chinese Federation, and there's a whole bunch of people who are in charge of the Asian Federation at the time.
Yeah.
Like 3 or 4 people who are all on the board for the Asian Federation, who all know me, who all know Gregor. And they're literally talking to the person from the Chinese Federation, and they're telling them basically, please give a media credential to these 2 guys. Like, these guys come to every meet. Please, they're not here to do anything bad. Like, please give them a media credential. And the person from the Chinese Federation was like very adamant, like no, there is no media credential. We are not giving them a media credential.
Yeah.
So we were like, I'm not sure what to do. So we wrote to someone from the IWF.
Yeah.
And the person from the IWF emailed the CWA, and then finally the CWA agreed to give us a pass. Now, our passes didn't say media. Here's what's funny: our passes said VIP. But so
I thought they gave you an athlete pass or something.
So then what happened was, the person from the CWA said, okay, here's a media pass.
Yeah.
However, no video, only photos.
Yeah.
And they basically said the reason was because the IWF said, hey, we want photos for the IWF magazine.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, that's a problem, because obviously a large portion of what we do is videos. Like, most of the social media algorithms favor video.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then what we did was, we were like, you know what? I was like, I just want to see how this actually plays out. So basically, and here's the thing: I always follow the rules that are given to me. So I'm not one of these people who's like, well, she said no video, but I'm gonna sneak in and take videos anyway. Because the thing is, it's like, that's not a good way to like operate if you want to kind of last in this sort of thing. So basically, if someone tells me, hey, no video, then while she's handing me the media pass, then I'm not going to take video. So here's what we did. And for basically the first day, we went in there, and Gregor sat down low in the area where media was allowed to sit. Like, he sat in like the field of play, and he used his media pass. And so I sat up top, and I wasn't like, neither one of us were taking video. I just sat up top in the bleachers and just watched. And Gregor and I agreed, like, well, rather than both of us sitting down there taking photos, just one of us takes photos, and then we'll just share them at the end. So Gregor sat down at the bottom and took photos, and I sat up at top and was looking around. There's like this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. They all have tripods set up, and they're all taking videos from the stand. Like, there were no less than 5 tripods. And what I did was, in case anyone ever complained, I took pictures of each one of them taking videos with tripods. So if anyone ever complains, like, I still have those photos of people taking videos with tripods.
Yeah.
So then I was like, you know what? I messaged Gregor the first day, I think, when he was like in the middle of shooting the photos. I was like, you know what? I have an idea. How about this? How about I go outside and I buy tickets, and I don't use my media credential. I sit in the audience and I take videos, and I'll just have all the tickets. And if anyone says, hey, we gave you a credential and said you couldn't take videos, I'd be like, there's 5 other guys taking videos, not for CCTV. These are just, guys for like Shenzhen Weightlifting and like, other Chinese social media accounts. I don't know who they all were, but
Yeah.
one of them was definitely Shenzhen Weightlifting. But anyway, like I was like, I'm not violating the rule if I basically leave my media credential at home, buy tickets, go in with a ticket every day, and take videos from the stands.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of what we did there, was we just took videos from the stands. So I took any video you see from 2019 in Ningbo on either ATG or Hookgrip is my video. And any photo you see is Gregor's photos, but we just split everything at the end.
Nice.
But it's like after going through that sort of experience, oh, you know what? I forgot to mention something important. So probably 3 or 4 days in, we get woken up and there's like 3 police officers outside of our door. And we're like, what? Like, are we like getting arrested for like, did someone like spot me taking video and like, or, trying to like arrest us?
Yeah.
And so the Chinese police officers, I think one of them spoke English. I think they sent like an English speaking guy just because they knew they were going to talk to people who didn't speak Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
And they basically said, oh, we need to question you. And we were like, question us? Like, question us about what? Like, they're like, oh, nothing in particular. We just need to question you. And
did they invite you to drink tea?
Yeah. So then we were like, okay, like, so it's in English, if someone says we're going to question you if put it this way, if a police officer comes to my place of residence in the US and says I have to question you, what that means is you're leaving right then in a police car to go to the station, and it means that you like are suspected of a crime. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So we were like, question us, like, when, where, how, like, what are you talking about? And they're like, oh, can we meet somewhere tomorrow? So the following morning, we met them at like a Starbucks and talked to them for like an hour. And here's the thing, they were actually really friendly. Like they weren't unfriendly at all. Mm-hmm. But it was like very jarring to have. And by the way, the second day they weren't in uniform. The first day the police officers were in like police uniforms. So the second day, like when we went to talk to them at Starbucks, like they bought us drinks, they bought us food, they were extremely friendly. And it was so weird because we were like, we thought we did something really wrong and we were like about to get kicked out of China or who knows what. Yeah. But I mean, we didn't do anything wrong, so I was kind of confused. As I was all ready to show them pictures of other people in the audience taking videos. But anyway, they just asked us a bunch of questions, and one thing we explained to them was we were like, you guys, like, I think they just see like, Western people and media, and they're like, oh shit, this is bad. Yeah. Like we tried to explain to them, we're like, listen, guys, like, we're not political media. We're not like reporting on anything in China other than how many like kilos people can lift up with a barbell. Like, we don't do any like political anything whatsoever. Yeah. We're literally taking videos. Like we go from the hotel to the competition and then stay there for 12 hours and then go to a restaurant, and then go to the hotel, and then like it's literally just a small circle. Like if you look at our phones, like we don't go anywhere. Like we're, because we stayed in a hotel that was like walkable to the competition. Like, we're staying in like a 1 kilometer radius all the whole time. But we had to explain to them, like, we're trying to make China look good. Like it was a very like weird concept. They didn't understand it. Like I think eventually they understood it. Like we showed them some of our social media and like what we do and what we had done the prior day. Like, look here, this is a Chinese guy lifting a lot of weight. Look, like 70,000 people liked it or whatever, And they're like, okay, like fine. But it took a lot of convincing. So like, it's a little bit jarring for like someone who doesn't speak the language to go into that situation,
So back to the original question then, like, when was it like when you realized that the Chinese weightlifting team had more exposure? I don't
What
know
do you
if
mean more exposure?
would exposure be the right word? Like more, basically more, their comments is mostly more liked and more shared compared to the other team. Or like when did you realize Lü and Tian was famous? Like,
I mean, I would say from like the first meet. Like my first meet ever was 2011 Worlds in Paris. That was like I never went to another. I didn't even go to a U.S. Nationals before that. I didn't go to like an American Open or any like small meets or whatever. But my first meet was 2011 Worlds in Paris, and like literally from the first couple days, like the first one of my first like 3 or 4 days was Lü winning in the 77s and attempting a 211 clean and jerk there. And so that was like very early on. Of course, I knew even then he was a big star because like, of course, this was before he'd won the Olympics, but he had set those world records in 2009. And he didn't go in 2010, but like, or wait, no, he did go. He lost to Tigran in 2010, my bad. So I didn't go in 2010, I guess I should say. I knew he was kind of a kind of like star in the making. But one thing to realize is that those days of social media, there were no accounts. Like I was like,
I don't think there was social. What was it? I think Facebook had just started around that time, right?
No. Facebook started like 2004, but this was
but like it got big around that time. I think I was around 8.
I mean, it was
at that time, yeah.
No, it was fairly popular in by the time like 2011 rolled around. It was maybe not like now, but it was still fairly popular.
Yeah.
But Instagram was still brand new. I don't even think I made a Hookgrip Instagram until maybe 2012. I want to say I don't think I had one in 2011. I'd have to check that. I don't know if I can check it, but anyway. I'm pretty sure it was 2012 I actually made the Hookgrip Instagram. But yeah, I just, I knew from the get-go that the Chinese weightlifters were popular. Of course, like Liao and Lü, and this was before, Shi Zhiyong was really popular, but there were a bunch of others. And, the Chinese female lifters have never been as popular as the guys. But
I think that's what's the general like the general sport. I wouldn't say it's with the athlete itself.
Not necessarily, because like for instance, Guo is one of the most popular athletes. There's no more popular, male athlete. Toma is one of the more popular athletes. Like there's no Romanian who's more popular than Toma.
I think one of the success with Guo is she's quite good at expressing herself and she's quite welcoming. I got that feel when I was talking to her, etc.
Yeah, I don't know.
I open to like absolutely, whereas because most of the Chinese weightlifter, they all came from like a very rural background with like very little education. So they if you watch any of the leader in an interview, you'll realize this. He has a very bad time at explaining himself or like expressing himself. So yeah. Like he will always stutter in any interview.
I don't know much about that just because when I listen to them, it all sounds like I can't understand any of it. So, if I've had people tell me, like I basically have a friend who lives near here who, understands Chinese. And when he was watching Lü talk, he said, "Oh, he's got like a super like basically kind of like basically rural accent was the way that he described it." He said that it was actually difficult for him, and his Chinese was basically like Beijing, I guess, like very standard Chinese. Or accent. No, the guy who I know.
Oh, okay.
The guy who I know knew like he called it standard Chinese.
Yeah.
But he had like a Beijing accent. And he said that he actually had a lot of difficulty understanding what Lü was saying sometimes.
Regional accent?
maybe regional accent. He called it like rural, and he said if he had to translate it to English, he would call it like a hick accent. I don't know if you know the term hick in English, but I mean those were his words. Once again, I don't know.
Yeah, okay. I know what you mean. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I can't understand anything that Lü says. So to me, it's a, it sounds like he's speaking fluent Chinese. I mean, that's the best thing I could say, but
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, I guess the Chinese females are, I think like Deng Wei is the first person who really broke through to the mass Western audience, where if you talk to like an average weightlifting fan who likes weightlifting but isn't like a hardcore knows everyone weightlifting fan, Deng Wei was really the first person Chinese female, I should say, who if you showed a picture of her to one of these like kind of average American fans, that they would be like, oh, Deng Wei, yeah. Or actually, they don't say Deng Wei though; they say Deng Wei.
Yeah.
But like
I mean, like Lü Xiaojun is actually Lü Xiaojun, but I got carried away from short pronounce for years. Even I call him Lü Xiaojun now.
Yeah, I know that because I've had Chinese people tell me that a bunch of times, but I can't say it right. To me, like the best I can do, and I'll do my attempt here. Lü Xiaojun.
That's pretty good, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's about as good as I can do. I can't do it any better than that. But what's funny is that I've said that to people like Chinese speakers, and they're like, "You're close, but it's not quite right." And like they'll say it back to me, and then I'll say it again, and then they're like, "You're close, it's not quite right." Like it's like I can get like 80 or 90% of the way there.
Yeah.
But I can't get that last little bit. But anyway, like Deng Wei was really the first Chinese female to like break through. But I mean, all of the Chinese males, like it's been a known thing going back to, I mean, like, in 2012, it was obvious at like the Olympics that, Liu, I guess I could kind of try to say his name right. It's easier, honestly, for me just to say Liu than it is to try to like fake saying it, right, but actually saying it wrong. And then obviously in 2013, sorry?
I was just saying, do you have any idea who's the most famous female Chinese weightlifter now? In terms of following or like exposure on social media?
I mean, it's definitely Deng Wei if you're not excluding her now that she's retired.
It's Li Wenwen.
Oh, you're saying in China?
Yeah.
Oh, in China. Okay, Li Wenwen. Yeah. I mean, I guess that makes sense because she won the Olympics and she's a super heavy, so it's kind of like it's kind of like a little more recognizable to follow her.
And she posts daily on Douyin. Well, not daily, but very regularly.
Okay. I thought you were asking me who I thought was the most popular other than Deng Wei.
Oh, I would also agree with Deng Wei. Yeah.
Yeah, it's but I was gonna say, going back to even 2013, I remember when I was in the training hall, like taking photos of Lü doing squats and stuff like that, and Tian Tao was there, and Liao Hui was there, and all these there were a bunch of other good Chinese weightlifters, like Shang Yang Mei was there. I'm trying to think of like who else. Well, Deng Wei was there. She ended up bombing out, but she was there. And like they basically sent like the best of the best for that meet. And even then, I was still getting a lot of messages saying like, make sure you get lots of video, or sorry, not videos because I wasn't taking videos, but make sure you get lots of photos of Tian Tao and stuff like that, because that was Tian Tao's first kind of like international meet.
Yeah.
2013 Worlds. I think
he didn't do well at that one.
No, I think he got injured. I think he got injured during a snatch or something.
I think
so he didn't do well, but
when he just moved from 77 to 85, right? That year.
Yeah, exactly. But all of the hardcore fans knew who he was, even though it was kind of similar to when Li Dayin started going to international meets.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like a few years ago, in like 2018, as of like mid 2018, Li Dayin had never been to an international meet.
Mm.
But when he did start going to international meets, everyone knew who he was because they'd seen him at Chinese national meets. But it was the same in 2013. So like I was saying, I've known for forever that Chinese weightlifters were incredibly popular on social media. There's a bunch of reasons for it, but
Do you have a favorite?
You know, so I think there's like two answers to that. My favorite just to watch, just because I really, really like how he lifts, was always Liao Hui.
Liao Hui.
Just because. Now the thing is that the problem with Liao Hui is that he just doesn't lift anymore. So it's like it's tough to say he's my favorite because I like watching people who are still lifting. It's kind of like, okay, you could say that you know, some guy from the 80s is your favorite weightlifter, but it's kind of like who's more active. But I would say probably, like, at least now it's probably Shi Zhiyong.
Shi Zhiyong.
And it's not, yeah, it's nothing really against you know, like Lü or Tian Tao or really any of the other, you know, like Chen Li Jun or anyone. I just really I like the just like raw power of it.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, and that's what I always liked about Liao Hui too, that both of them kind of didn't have like classical smooth, like they never really made lifts look easy. Even though it's like, I don't know how to put it, but they make it look like they can do it, but it looks like just really powerful and stuff like that. Whereas like with Lü, he's just so smooth.
Yeah.
You know, he's almost like too smooth for me.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe it. I don't know how else to describe it.
Do you mean the technique?
Yeah, with Lü, he either makes it and it looks smooth and easy, or he just misses it. Like Lü never, like, they're not never, but it's very rare for him to like fight his way through things. Now, an exception was the 207 in 2019.
Oh yeah.
So it's not that he never does, but typically for Lü, if he's at the bottom of like a 200 clean and jerk and he's in the squat jerk position, if it doesn't like feel good, he just drops it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm talking in his average competitions, that's what he does. Whereas when, you know, Shi Zhiyong is in the bottom of the squat position, he has this like look on his face where he's like so determined, and like literally he looks like he wouldn't drop that bar if you kicked him in the face right now.
Yeah.
You know? And so that's like to me the difference. That's why I like watching him. But what's cool about Lü is that when he needs that for something important, he has the ability to kind of like bring that out in himself, you know? And so when he needed it in Pattaya, I don't want it to come across as me saying, oh, you know, Lü's a baby, Shi Zhiyong's tough. It's more so that Shi Zhiyong is always tough.
Yeah.
Lü's tough when he needs to be. Like if I think that, you know, let's say like Nino Pizzolatto had a great Olympics and Lü Xiaojun needed like a 208 or 210 clean and jerk to win the Olympics, I think he would have done it.
I think he would have done it.
But the thing is, he only does it when he needs to do it.
Yeah.
You know, like that 198 that Shi Zhiyong hit in Tokyo. That's the sort of lift that Shi Zhiyong hits but Lü doesn't hit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like Shi Zhiyong didn't need that 198.
He wants to break the world record 1 kilo at a time. That's his plan until retirement.
Yeah. So, you know, the thing is I actually like watching all of them. I really love watching Tian Tao. I really love watching Lü because I appreciate they're all like a little different. I mean, Tian Tao literally has, I think, the best clean in the history of weightlifting. You know, and like Lü Xiaojun's snatch is just incredible. I mean, the fact that Lü like snatched 100 kilos over body weight in the modern era is insane. You know, like 100 kilos over body weight is just such like a mythical thing to reach in weightlifting.
Yeah. And
do you know the last guy to do it before Lü?
No, I'm not too familiar with the history. I mean, I like you said, like I quite regret getting into weightlifting a bit late because I think I when I first discovered Liao Hui, I went down like a rabbit hole, started watching all his videos. Like, oh my God, I missed all of this.
Yeah.
And there was a massive debate on the internet like last week saying who's the highest Sinclair weightlifter. And people saying it's Liao, but there is
Wait,
one
in which country?
in China.
Oh, highest Sinclair in China.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everyone's saying it's Liao Hui because he did 359.
Okay.
Shi Zhiyong did 360 just before the weight class change. But it was a very small competition that nobody, well, unless you're like a hard fan, you don't know about it.
No, there have been some like if you're talking about best Sinclair in any meet, including Chinese national meets, then it's a little different. But yeah, the best Sinclair was probably Liao's performance in 2014 in Almaty. I think that would be.
Was this 359?
I think so. I think that's when he did 359. He did.
Yeah, Shi Zhiyong did 360.
Yeah, I guess so. It just depends on which meets you're going to count, and like, are you going to count Chinese nationals, or are you going to count meets that aren't Chinese nationals? You know, are you going to count small like test meets in the national training?
Oh no. I mean that was like an actual competition. It was the Chinese national championship, so it wasn't like just a test event.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was actually on the news and everything because he did 360.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I love watching both of those guys because I think they actually have a lot of similarities in their lifting with regards to they don't lift as smooth and easy as someone like Lü. And then the other thing about that I like about both Liao and Shi Zhiyong is I feel like when they were at their peaks, I mean, Shi Zhiyong is still at his peak, but I mean, when Liao was at his peak, they were the best in the world at both snatch and clean and jerk.
Yeah.
Which to me is kind of like a cool thing. Like, you know, Lü obviously has always historically been basically the best snatcher, but he hasn't really necessarily always been the best clean and jerker. He's been arguably the best clean and jerker. I mean, he's had the world record, but it's kind of like there's always people close to him, you know, to the clean and jerk. He either was the best or kind of close to it. And the same thing with Tian Tao. Tian Tao is like obviously arguably the best clean and jerker, but he either isn't the best snatcher or he's like third or fourth or fifth even sometimes in snatch.
He told me it's because his elbow injury back in 2012. He said if you watch the national game, he was very consistent in the snatch now. He said every time.
Also because of his thumb too. Like he has like
and his small hand, that. But he said because before like there was like a pain if he caught it.
Yeah.
So he would either catch it or like the pain would like be too much and he had to drop the bar. But now like after the surgery, he's very consistent now.
Yeah, I mean the thing, you know, is that obviously people always have reasons for why they aren't. You know, like Lü Xiaojun might be, well, I can't squat heavy enough because of this back pain, so therefore I'm not as good in the clean. Like there's always a reason for why they're not. Like I'm not blaming anyone here. I'm not being. I'm not trying to say, oh, Tian Tao doesn't try a snatch or something like that. I know he tries. Like he you know, trains super hard.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that irrespective of all these outside reasons with regards to like historical injuries or training or small thumbs or, you know, I know Tian Tao said when he got fatter, his hand got bigger and like he had like trouble, and by fatter I mean
gripping the
96.
bar,
I don't mean fat, you know. So, but the thing that's cool to me about both Liao and Shi Zhiyong is not only were they the best, or are they the best, in the case of Shi Zhiyong still is the best, but not only are they the best at snatch by a long shot, they're also the best at clean and jerk by a long shot. Like no one would debate at their peak either one wasn't the best in the world at both of them, which to me is kind of like a cool accomplishment, because there's even people like Lü Xiaojun, who's literally a 2-time Olympic champion, Olympic silver medalist, and honestly he should have been Olympic gold medalist in 2016 also. Like Lü should be a 3-time Olympic champion, And like whoever, I haven't even counted how many times he's been world champion. So we're literally talking about like arguably the best weightlifter of all time in Lü Xiaojun. Like maybe he is, maybe he isn't, but for sure he's like top 3, you know, in terms of best, you know, yeah, like I would put maybe like Lasha and Suleymanoglu and Lü up there as like the 3 best weightlifters of all time. And like he still is not the undisputed clean and jerker. You know, even being one of the best in ever in the history of sport, not just this class, just the best ever, period.
Yeah.
In terms of accomplishments and everything. And he still can't say that he was definitively the best clean and jerker through his whole career.
True.
He can say definitively he was the best snatcher, but not clean and jerker. It was clean and jerk was always close. Whereas like with Liao and Shi Zhiyong, they can say definitively best snatcher, definitively best clean and jerker. Like that, to me, that's like a whole different level of dominance. So that's kind of why I like that's why I named those 2 guys when I said my favorites.
They were miles ahead of the other competition.
Yeah, like Shi Zhiyong is just so dominant now. Like it wasn't even a question as to whether he would win in Tokyo. It's just like how much is he going to win by? You know, like that's cool. And the other thing about him too is that in some classes, it was like, oh, I knew who was going to win, but that class was kind of like weakened. You know, so it's kind of difficult to give them the same credit. Like for instance, with Miso winning in the 96s, it's like, well, you're winning, but you know, Tian Tao isn't there. Now, I don't blame Miso for that because it's not his fault. He can only beat whoever shows up. But you know, with Shi Zhiyong, he wasn't facing a weakened class. Like he was facing really good weightlifters. He was facing, you know, basically all the best 73s. I mean, other than Chinese athletes, I can't think of a strong 73 who was at home, who had any reasonable shot of beating him. You know, he was facing the best. He just, you know, he's just so much better that it didn't matter.
That's that Indonesian kid, right? I think he's done the 205 in training or 200 in training. I think I saw Gregor.
Yeah.
But he's
you're talking about
quite far behind. He's still quite far behind in the snatch.
Yeah, Rizky.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. So Rizky, I think he snatched 55 or something like that. I think he did like 55.94 in at Junior Worlds.
Yeah.
Obviously, Rizky's good, but like everyone knows that if he showed up to Tokyo, I mean, first of all, he wasn't even eligible because you know, he didn't go to enough meet. He didn't have any qualifying points really, or you know, whatever, almost no qualifying points. But you know, there were also 2 good Indonesians. There was the guy who got bronze out of the beat session. So you know, he would have had to beat that guy too. No, I mean, arguably, obviously, his total was better than that guy's, but either way, like he still wasn't going to beat shit. I mean, 55.94 is pretty similar to what the best numbers from people like CJ, people like Julio Mayora. So it wasn't like Rizky was doing numbers that were going to beat Shi Zhiyong anyway. And I don't really give that much credit to like, oh, he did 205 in training because he's not making weight and he's just, who knows how many attempts he took at it. It's like, you know, Shi Zhiyong has done that in training too. So who cares? You know what I mean? Yeah. Obviously, I do think Rizky is like a major talent for the future though. I hope he, you know, is still lifting. We haven't seen him since that meet though. So I don't know. I know he has some like problems with the federation. I think the federation kind of favors Rahmat a little bit over Rizky. But we'll see if that continues or exactly what will happen.
You know. I mean, last question, probably, do you have any favorite moments in your 11 years now? Yeah,
about 11. It's really like 10. You know, people always like to round up as soon as the new year happens, but it's really like 10 years that I've actually been doing it. I would say, you know, you want the favorite moments that involve Chinese, or do you just want my favorite moments?
Well, let's say both then.
I'd say my favorite moment period was definitely the 2014 105A session with Ilya and Nuradinov and Benjamin.
Oh yeah.
And it's cool because I was right there. I was right next to the platform, you know. So I had this big crowd of people all around me. Obviously not there for me, but had these people all around me. And it was like just a crazy session. And it wasn't just that, oh, there were big lifts. It was that, you know, Ilya wasn't home. Ilya was losing. There were 3 world records in a row. Like 3 of the best 105s basically ever were lifting. So it wasn't like we were watching 3 kind of mid-level lifters competing. We were watching like 3 of the best, all in basically the best shape of their whole career, all in, you know, a very high pressure situation. You know, like it was just an incredible session. Like I can't think of a better session than that. My favorite session that probably involved a Chinese athlete, and you know, frankly, I can't really remember if Yang Zhe was in that 105 session or not. If he was, he obviously wasn't really a factor to win. But I mean, don't get me wrong, Yang Zhe is actually an incredibly good lifter, but at the time he wasn't doing numbers that those guys were doing.
It's always his clean and jerk.
Yeah, but you know, honestly, his clean and jerk has gotten pretty good. Like, especially in like 2019 in Ningbo, his clean and jerk looked good. Like he looked like he was going to be a contender in the 109. But the bigger problem for Yang Zhe, then even bigger than his clean and jerk, is the spot limitations at the Olympics and the fact that the Chinese are so good at other classes.
Yeah.
You know, like that's his biggest problem. Like he's never going to get to the Olympics because there's not that many spaces. And, you know, if he's capable of winning like a silver or a bronze or depending on the situation, maybe a gold, like he's never going to be as dominant and known to win a gold as, you know, Shi Zhiyong or Lü Xiaojun or really anyone like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, but that session in 2014 was definitely the best one. The best one, I think, involving a Chinese lifter was the 2016 Olympics in the 85As.
When Tian Tao made two.
Yeah, that was actually where I gave Tian Tao his nickname of Heart Attack. I don't know if the Chinese audience knows that I'm the one that gave him that nickname.
I mean, like it was all over the news. Like everybody was having a heart attack that morning because it was, I think, when he was competing, it was 6 a.m. And there was news, I think, that his whole family and like the whole region watched it in like a cinema or something, and he gave everyone a heart attack.
Yeah. Well, maybe we all gave him the nickname at the same time, but I remember
even in his interview, he was like saying, "I'm so sorry for like giving everyone a heart attack. Like I should have only made 2 of them."
Well, his nickname is Heart Attack not because of 2 attempts. His nickname is Heart Attack because he goes like miss, make, and he does that. The thing about Tian Tao is he does that like fairly, like he does it more often than almost anyone. For someone who's an elite like weightlifter, he does that, I would say, more than anyone else. So anyway, but that session was great because of the quality of totals. You know, Rostami did incredible numbers, Tian Tao did incredible numbers, Synchron did incredible numbers. Obviously he got popped, but Ulanov did incredible numbers, Pilishenko did incredible numbers. Like it was just a list of like massive lifts in the 85s. Like it was, I would say, maybe the strongest 85 kilo session in the 20 years that 85s existed. You know, from 1998 to 2018, 85s existed, and the best session that entire time in terms of overall quality of numbers was 2016. Yeah. And the other thing that I like about watching a session like the 85s is that you're not watching kind of like weird outliers of like human, you know, I would say like genetics. you know.
Okay.
Whereas like if you watch something like the 55 kilo session or something like that, or back in the day when the Olympics had 56s, you know, you're basically watching like a bunch of like real outliers. Like Amyan Chol is not a normal human in terms of his sizing.
Yeah.
You know, like Long, I'm gonna butcher his last name, but Long
Long,
Qingquan.
yeah. Long Qingquan, yeah.
Yeah, I can't say his given name properly, but
Mm.
that a guy like Long or Amyan Chol, watching the two of them, okay, are they great weightlifters? Yeah, they're great weightlifters. But they're kind of like freak outliers on the human genetic scale. You know, there's only so many people that can compete with those guys. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's the same with the supers. Like when you watch Lasha, the guy's like 2 meters tall. He weighs 180 kilos. I mean, how many humans are even capable of looking like that or being that size at any point in their life? Like it's like just a few percentage points of humans and could even
the thing
possibly
is,
get to that size.
yeah.
Whereas watching the 85s, you're watching like the average human, you know?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I like about it.
Yeah. Lü, Shi Zhiyong, and Yang Zhe all commented on how amazing Lasha's form is.
No, Lasha has incredible technique.
Yeah.
You know, Lasha has really good technique, but it doesn't matter how good your you know, you're not going to out technique Lasha and win in the supers against him if you're 1.7 meters tall.
Yeah.
You're just gonna not like you would be like a little around compared to if you weighed 180 kilos. I mean, you would look like if you know who Chingiz is from Russia, you would look like Chingiz Mogushkov if you wanted to.
How tall is Lasha? And
he's over 2 meters tall, like just a little bit.
Okay.
Maybe like 2.05 or 2.03. I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't tried to measure him, but, you know. Anyway, yeah, no, he's tall. So what I'm saying is, like, obviously Lasha's an incredible weightlifter. I love watching him lift. Same thing with Amyan Chol and Long. Like, I like watching them lift.
Yeah.
They're both incredible weightlifters, but there's something about watching like the middle of the road athlete. It's kind of the same with the females. Like, do I like watching the 45s and the supers? I mean, yeah, I like watching the 45s and the supers, but at the end of the day, they are outliers compared to watching like the 64s. Because
it's like
if you,
a more relatable weight class to like an average human?
It's more so just that if you look at a bell curve of what humans would weigh, and I'm not talking about what like the average person weighs, I'm talking about what like the average weightlifter, like someone who trains, takes the sport seriously, doesn't try to eat an insane amount to gain weight to be in a bigger class, and doesn't diet like crazy to be in a smaller class. I'm talking like if you just took the average person and told them, you know, eat healthy, eat reasonable portions, train hard, and don't even think about weight class. Like at the end of 10 years of that, you would have a curve of people that looks like this, goes up like this, comes down like this. And I'm talking about that if you want to hit the top of that curve, like the most common person who goes through all that training. And like I said, I'm not counting people who sit at home and do nothing, and I'm not counting people who are maybe trying to get really big or trying to be really small. I'm talking like the average person, just where they would end up if they try to be healthy and train. They would end up at like maybe the average female would end up in the 60s and the average male would end up in like the 80s.
Yeah.
So that to me, like that's why those classes are the most interesting, because that's where you have the peak of people. It's the same with height. You know what I mean? Like watching someone who is a male who's 2 meters tall, it's like you're kind of watching an extreme, you know. Whereas if you want to talk about someone who's like I don't know what it is in China. I guess it would depend on if you're in the north or the south, but like in the US, the average height for a male is probably like 170, high 170s, I would say.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's a little tough for me converting to metric for height,
Yeah.
but it's probably in the high 170s. So that's like that's the top of the bell curve. 2 meters is down here somewhere. 170s is here. 1.6 is here.
Yeah.
And you're just like, okay, you would want to watch kind of the middle, because that's like, it's not so much that I like to watch the average size. It's more so that average size has more people in it. If you have more
Yeah.
people in it, you have a better competition.
Yeah.
Like that. That's why it's boring by comparison. Now, I don't want anyone to get offended with me, because like some other podcasts I've done, I've said things where people got like really offended with what I said because they didn't understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that the 45s are boring. I'm not saying that the 55s are boring. I'm not saying that the supers of either male or female are boring. But compared to those middle classes, it's like less interesting on average.
I'd say you've explained it very well. It makes it. It makes it so like people are more related. Like this is what I would have. No, sorry. This is what someone like in my weight class has done through years of training. That how they can achieve.
But it's relatability, but it's also not, because for instance, for me, I'm taller and fatter than like the average person. I'm 1.83, 1.84, and I typically, most of the times, I weigh like 110.
Mhm.
So I'm bigger in both height and weight than the average person. So I don't necessarily like watching, let's say, the 85s, or in this case, I'm excited to watch the 89s in this quad. But it's not so much that I'm like, oh, I like to watching it for relatability. I like watching it for competition, because I feel like if there's, let's say that there's 100,000 weightlifters out there, like 50,000 of them are going to be in that middle group. So you're going to have the best competition there.
Yeah, it's.
Whereas
I found this the same.
There's only so many at the end.
For most of the weightlifting competition, it's only entertaining the last 10 minutes of it. Like even for some of the competition, I think even for Tokyo or like I didn't watch the first 20 minutes of it, because you won't get to see the backstage, and you won't get to see who's going to win. And I don't know, and somehow just all with the broadcasting, like how the general television works, like the filming angle just doesn't interest me. It's always from the front, and it's always you always get ridiculous, and then you get like a ridiculous close up of their teeth. So yeah, it's just not entertaining for someone who actually trains. Like if you film it from the side, I can see like the technique breakdown, I might watch it a bit more. But for the general like TV broadcast, it just doesn't interest me.
Yeah, weightlifting has always been poorly broadcast, in my opinion. And that's actually one reason that I go to meets that are televised, because you could make the argument, it's like, well, why go to a meet that's televised? Because everyone's going to see the lift before I ever get a chance to post anything. Obviously, I'm never the fastest one to get a lift up, but it's like the TV always ruins all the angles, and they do dumb stuff, like they switch in the middle of the pull.
Yeah,
like literally someone will be pulling and they'll go from this angle to this angle, and you're like, what? Like, and you literally miss it. You can't even see what just happened because of how they do it. Either that, or they do.
The 2014 105 is very interesting, just even the TV version, because the results were so close.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, that's when people ask, I think, how, if I want to improve like the broadcasting or the competitive weightlifting, I just say go look at CrossFit. They're doing a way better job at broadcasting than weightlifting.
Yeah.
Now,
weightlifting has always seemed to struggle with promotion of itself, and that's actually one reason that pages like Hookgrip and All Things Gym have even been able to get popular. It's just that the TV versions are so bad that anyone who's interested in really seeing what happened doesn't really want to watch that. Like they only watch it out of just pure necessity, because there is no other option. They don't watch it because they're like, wow, this is great.
It's for a very niche audience, I'd say. I mean, it's gotten better since CrossFit was introduced, but like the most popular video was still their like squat videos or like deadlift videos rather than their clean and jerks or snatch.
Yeah, I mean, people like to see something kind of like behind the scenes. You know, people like to see kind of like the, oh, how did they do that world record? Not so much, oh, there's the world record. They want to see the,
Yeah,
you know, the behind the scenes documentary. It's kind of like, you know, in 2020, ESPN and Netflix released something called The Last Dance, the thing about the Bulls team in 1997 and 98. You know, people are more interested in watching that kind of like behind the scenes. Like if ESPN had been like, hey, we're gonna replay all the Bulls, you know, champion NBA Finals games from 97, 98, like 8 people would have watched that because everyone had kind of already seen it.
yeah.
But when you put something out that's kind of behind the scenes, this is how it happened. These are interviews and kind of footage that is kind of like how those championships happened. Then people are interested. So people always want to see something kind of like that wasn't like the main thing. You know what I mean? I don't know how to describe it.
In China, if you want to watch the weightlifting, well, in fact, any competition now, if it's broadcasted by the CCTV, they have an official app where you can cut the camera yourself.
Yeah.
Like, you want to watch the main stage, click the main stage button. You want to watch the backstage, click the backstage button. You want to like, they have one camera on the front, one camera on the like the main stage, one camera on the where the coaches can change weights. One camera on the main contender. Like if it's 81, it'll be the camera will be on Lü the whole time.
Yeah.
And then like another camera just like general backstage of the whole room.
Yeah, I mean that's just way better than how most weightlifting meets are broadcast. And then there's other things that I would do. If put it this way, if I was in charge of weightlifting, the media situation would look like wildly different. Like I would do something where I would put like 360 cameras in the training hall. Like I would just have like a pole like every couple platforms with a 360 camera on it. And I would just live stream that. And then I would also put cameras around the edges that wouldn't be 360, but you could still like see, you know, parts of the training hall. And I'd literally just be like, okay, for the worlds, $20, and you can subscribe and choose what you want to watch. Like, do you know how popular that would be if people could just log in and see what's going on at any given time?
I would do it like an octagon, like all the platforms like on each corner, then the platform is in the middle. So all the athletes, while they're warming up, they can see the main thing, and the camera will just be like free roaming. Like you get like a lot of cameras everywhere. You can see, so you can see like the reactions of athletes seeing their competition.
Yeah.
So everybody loves to see reaction videos. No idea why, but
yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff that weightlifting could do to make it more like palatable for audiences and more interesting for audiences.
Was it Frowning versus Fraser? Like when they had the max clean and jerk, or was it max whatever in 10 minutes? I can't remember.
I don't really know. To be honest, I don't follow like the CrossFit games that closely. Like I've watched some, but
that format I think is probably best for weightlifting. Like 2 of you guys enter a ring, whoever lifts the most in 10 minutes, and a crowds are cheering, and there's like loads of camera angles like for people who wants to watch it, and for the general public as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of formats for weightlifting that would be a lot more interesting than the current one. The thing is that the current one was designed for a different audience and a different time and like a different mindset. You know, it wasn't designed for like the social media TikTok sort of audience where like everything's got to happen fast. I mean, the thing is, and this is like, it kind of pains me to say this, but weightlifting as it exists right now in your average session is boring.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I agree.
Now, that's not to say the whole meet is boring, and that's not to say that all of the athletes are boring, but if I show up for like an average like C session at Worlds, it is an absolute snooze fest. Like it's just really not interesting to watch.
Yeah.
Now watching the best of the best, you know, watching the end of the session, like watching people like Whoa, or watching in the case of Chinese females like Li Wenwen or Deng Wei, or you know, really like any of the really good ones, Wang Zhuyu or anyone like that. Like it's just they are entertaining to watch, but the average session is like not interesting. And it's like, you know, everyone's trying, and like I don't sit there at a meet thinking like, oh, these people suck. Like that's not what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, man, like this is like something I should pay attention to, because all these people tried really hard. They've all been training really hard. You know, I'm about to go to the Arnold in a few days. And like I'm probably going to be there for like a CD. There's so many people in that meet. I think they're having like P sessions.
What was
like
that? Which letter?
A P.
A P.
Yeah. I'm not even kidding. Like I actually think there's going to be a 64 P session.
Okay.
So
would that just be like an average person entering it?
Yeah. They're obviously not, you know, contending for the world team.
Yeah,
in the
just have fun. Yeah.
You know, they're there to have fun. They've all trained. They've all tried. Like, you know, it's not. I'm not saying that when I go to a weightlifting meet, like I'm demanding that everyone be the best of the best, because that's just not how things work. But like, if I go watch like at the Arnold, like a C, a D, an E, an F, like any of those sessions, like I'm doing it because I'm trying to like help the sport, or in some cases I'm trying to help Hookgrip because I'm trying to like film someone who will maybe like buy their media or do something interesting, or who knows why. But it's like, to the average person, it's just not an interesting session. You know, it's like, let's just be real. Like it's not something that you can just watch casually. Like
the community, like we all really appreciate what you and Gregor do. Like you go to all these allegedly boring meets and film everyone. I mean,
well, you know, the thing is that most of the meets that I go to are not the boring ones. You know, I try to go to the good ones. I'm going to like, you know, Junior Worlds or Asian Championships or World Championships or, you know, Pan Ams or whatever. Like, like I don't get bored at those meets.
Yeah.
I'm talking about when I go to some like American Open series and it's like a C session and I'm taking these videos at like 8 in the morning or something. Those are the sessions where I'm sitting there thinking like why am I doing this? But like I said, it's not out of any disrespect to the athletes in that session, because I do respect what they're doing, and frankly, all of them are better weightlifters than I am. So, you know, I can't. I'm not sitting here being like, oh, you suck. I'm sitting here being like, I want to go do something else, just because that's just the reality.
Did you ever compete?
I never competed, just because when I got into weightlifting, I was mainly just busy working, and I also was not in weightlifting gyms when I first got into weightlifting.
Yeah.
And then by the time I got into a weightlifting gym, I had kind of just decided that I was just more interested in strength movements like squats and deadlifts and stuff like that than I was really in getting good at weightlifting.
Yeah. And
I just basically decided it just wasn't going to be something that I would ever want to really dedicate myself to. And the reason for that is mainly that weightlifting is hard.
Yeah.
And, you know, if weightlifting was something you could just kind of do part-time for fun and compete, I think I would have done it. But my thought process was basically like, weightlifting is hard and I have to either commit myself to it or just not do it.
And there's like so much that go wrong, like with the movements.
Yeah, it's just like, you know, weightlifting is not like, I'll give you an example. Like, for instance, during the pandemic, really like the last 2 years, I have trained like very intermittently. And by trained, I mean like do squats, deadlifts, presses, and some other, you know, just like slow sort of strength-based barbell movement. I can literally not do a squat for a year, and within like 3 weeks, I can squat pretty close to my max. You know, and literally the first workout, I don't feel like I lost anything in terms of my movement or my technique or anything when it comes to a squat. Like I can just not squat and I can squat a year later and feel fine.
Yeah.
Whereas there's lots of people I know who are really good weightlifters who don't do a snatch for like a week and a half, and they go to do a snatch workout and they're like, I forgot how to snatch. You know, weightlifting is hard. Like weightlifting is too hard of a thing to do as like a part-time person. And it's just, I mean, that's just the reality of it. I wasn't going to make that like competitive commitment to actually train as often as I needed to be a good weightlifter. And I really didn't want to be like a super half-ass like weightlifter who's like snatching, you know, 85 kilos and clean and jerking like 117 or something. Like to me, that would just be more embarrassing than just not doing it at all.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if I can't at my size, like if I can't like do, you know, 130, 160, then I feel like that's just an embarrassment. And for me to do what?
I wouldn't go as an embarrassment. I mean, snatching anything over 100 is still pretty impressive. Like,
no, but I'm saying for someone my size, because like I weigh 110.
But you're not a professional though. Like you didn't start.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
But the thing is like I don't know. Just to me, it's kind of like it's kind of like if you can't do it well enough to. And now once again, this is just me personally. Like I don't look at someone else out there who weighs 110 and is snatching 100 as like, oh, that's an embarrassment. I just mean for me, like, you know what I mean? Like everyone, everyone holds themselves to like different standards. It's the same way that like, I remember when I first started deadlifting, and this was back in the CrossFit in like 2009 when I was, you know, living in the Caribbean. And I remember the first time I ever did a deadlift, I think I did around like 120 or something like that. This was literally the first time I had done a deadlift since I had been in college. And that was like roughly like an 8 or 9 year span at that point. And when I was in college, I was doing them all wrong. I just didn't know that I was doing them wrong because there was no YouTube to tell me I was doing them wrong. But the first time I ever really did a deadlift in my life, I think I did 120, and I went home, watched a couple of videos, and I was like, that's just embarrassing. Like that. Now, granted, I weighed a lot less at that point. I didn't weigh 110, but I literally was like, that's an embarrassment to do that little. Now, I was like, you know, this is the first time I've ever done it, so it's understandable that I can't just deadlift 200 kilos straight out of the box. But it was just like, this is just too embarrassing. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna make like the commitment to get better at this. Yeah. And like now my lifetime PR is 265. So it's like I was able to like kind of get my deadlift up to a level where I was like, okay, I'm not embarrassing myself. Now, if I was to train weightlifting and like not be able to snatch 130 at some point in my life, I would say that's like kind of embarrassing just for me personally.
Yeah.
Because like I did sports my whole life. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. To me, that would just be embarrassing personally if I was to train it. And like I said, obviously, if I was to train it half-assed, where I was like, oh, I'm going to train 2 times a week with like no thought process behind it, with no coach, with no video analysis, with no nothing. Basically, if I was to do a half-assed job training, obviously I'm not going to snatch 130. You know what I mean? Doing it half-assed. I'm just saying, for me personally, I wouldn't want to do it half-assed. So that's why I was like, I'm just not gonna do it, because it's too tough and it's something you can't do half-assed.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
You know?
Like when I first started, I was obviously you were like constantly hitting PRs and PBs, what they call it. But then eventually you just realize, like, because I started very late, like I think I may never hit an 100-kilo snatch in my life, but like I'm fine with that.
But I would also, you know, there's a couple things to consider. You're a lot smaller.
Yeah.
You know, you don't weigh 110 kilos.
No, but I mean, it's like you see like some
So-
other kind of kids could do it, but then especially like you see kind of like people can hit like way higher number than what I hit. I weigh 70, around 70 now. Like for like I don't know. Like you
I
start.
mean, I think doing 100 at 70 is a better lift than doing 130 at 110.
But yeah, but what I mean,
Because-
it's like I'm probably never gonna hit 100, like because given my time of training and my commitment and just was working, but I'm fine with that. Like,
But that's what I'm saying. Like like you absolutely could hit 100 if you were dedicated to it.
mhm.
But what you're saying is that you just don't have the time or the basically ability to be that dedicated.
Yeah.
I'm saying that I don't like to do things like weightlifting if I feel like I can't dedicate myself to a reasonable degree. Obviously, I would never be dedicating myself to the degree of like a Chinese national team athlete who like lives, breathes, and does everything to do with the sport for like 20 years of their life.
Yeah.
Or more. But I just couldn't make that like competitive commitment that was like the minimum level that I would want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Is what I'm saying. So, and like I said, there's lots of people who train weightlifting, and really I would say the vast majority train weightlifting without that competitive commitment
Mm-hmm.
that I would want just for my own personal lifts. And that's fine. It's fine for people to train weightlifting. If someone out there wants to train weightlifting once a week, that's fine. I don't care. Like it doesn't bother me. I actually think it's great because it helps, kind of grow the sport. And that's like a large portion of our market is people who don't make that competitive commitment. I mean, the average person the average male who's 110 kilos ordering from Hookgrip probably cannot snatch 130, So, and it's fine. I'm once again, like everything I'm saying here with regards to this is strictly like what I think of, like just for myself, not what I think of other people. People sometimes confuse like what maybe like a standard that I hold myself to, that I would look at someone else and be like, that's embarrassing. Like, if I would only
agree on like anybody who went out there like watching any of our content decide to go try weightlifting, I have massive respect for them because it's a very hard sport, right? And
oh yeah, I mean, anyone who makes any sort of, I would say like routine, makes weightlifting a part of their training routine and sticks with it, like that's very admirable, because it's very, very easy with weightlifting to try it twice and say this is hard and quit and never do it again.
Yeah,
like that's a very easy thing to do. Now that's not what I did. I did it a lot more than twice, but I got to the point with weightlifting where I was like, what, in order to do this I'm gonna have to try. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I've done some stuff in weightlifting that's like not terrible. Like I've done like 130, 140 like power cleans and stuff like that. Like it's not like I've never done a lift in my life. It's just that I got to a point where I was like, what, in order for me to do the numbers and like do them at like a reasonable level of skill that I would want to do them at, I would need to train probably 5 times a week in weightlifting. And I was just like, I'm not going to do that. So that was, I just didn't do that. So, and then, like I said, people who want to scale back from that, it's perfectly fine. And I would compare it to even something like photos. Like if I take a photo and I look at it and I'm like, damn, that's a shitty photo. If someone else were to take a photo and hand it to me, I don't necessarily think, man, that's a shitty photo. You know what I mean? Like the standard that I hold myself to for certain things isn't necessarily what I'm thinking of for other people. Because as an example, if I take a photo as someone who's been taking photos of weightlifting for 10 years, and I take it with the floor like this, I look at it and I'm like, that's a shitty photo. Like, you're better than that at taking photos.
Yeah.
You know why? Because I've taken millions of photos over the last 10 years. That's bad for me. If I hand the camera to someone else and they take a photo and they get it like in focus, I'm like, damn, that's pretty good. Like, they're pretty good at taking photos.
Yeah.
You know, so people think that, like, sometimes on some of these podcasts, I've said things like this where I'm like, you know, it's an embarrassment to not do that. But I'm saying for me, you know what I mean? In the same way that to me, it would be an embarrassment if all my photos were like this. But I'm not necessarily judging other people. So I want to make that clear because, like I said, I've had other podcasts where I've said something like that and I haven't clarified. And I will get like angry messages later being like, you're too judgmental, blah, blah. Like, I'm not judging other people, I'm judging myself. So just, I want to make that really clear. So, and there's lots of things that I'm sure I do poorly that I don't know anything about, you know, that like I just do casually, that I'm like, you know, someone else who does it a lot would think the same thing if they were to do it themselves. I don't know how else to put it. You know, like as an example, I was telling you this before we got on the podcast. I was doing some electrical work today at Hookgrip to try to get one of those gigantic ceiling fans working properly.
Yeah.
I'm sure that if someone who is like an expert in like motor cable shielding watched me do what I was doing, I'm sure that they would be like, man, if I did that, that would be embarrassing. But they're not necessarily saying that I'm an embarrassment.
Yeah.
Because I'm doing it as someone who watched YouTube for 40 minutes on how to do this. And then did it. They might say, oh, you know, you watched YouTube for 40 minutes and you did that. That's pretty good.
That's me. Yeah.
You know, so
yeah.
You know, it's kind of the same thing with
like
me.
the one time you built your own Mac or like you upgraded memory or something. I was like, that's impressive.
Yeah,
like if you gave that to like a computer expert, it's like, oh, you're doing it wrong. But then for an average person, but you consider you taught it yourself from watching YouTube, that's impressive.
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess what you get the idea that I'm really just saying, like, there's different standards. Like, standards I hold myself to for certain things are different than what I even think another person should be at. Like, I'm often impressed if I give someone my camera and they give me back a picture that's in focus. I'm like, I'm in my head, I'm not even thinking, man, that really sucks, but at least it's in focus. In my head, I'm like, holy shit, they got it in focus.
No, that's
like another another example.
Yeah. Go
on. Another example that's a good one, I think, is I couldn't go to the Europeans this past year because it was in Russia.
Yeah.
And Russia wouldn't give entry visas to anyone who was media. So like I didn't go, Gregor didn't go, you know, no one weightlifting media really went. So what I did was I had a camera in Spain because the guy who takes a lot of my videos for me in Europe is based in Spain. And so he had one of my cameras. He actually has a few of my cameras, but one of them. And I told him, I'm like, hey, I have a question. Can you give the camera to the Spanish team? And then the Spanish team will bring it to Moscow. So the Spanish team, you know, smuggled it into Moscow.
Okay.
And then what I did was I basically got together a group of about 10 weightlifters on like an Instagram group chat, and not Spanish, because I was looking for people who have like a really good grasp of English. So I mainly got like Nordic lifters, so people from like Sweden, Finland, Norway, you know, Iceland, Denmark. I think I named all the Nordic countries. And I gave them, I basically had them, you know, take videos with my camera of the sessions, like sitting in the audience, hand holding it like this, you know, trying to not get like shaky video. And to be honest, they did an incredible job. Now, did they do a perfect job? No. If I had been the one running that camera, and I had come back with the videos that they gave me, I would have been like, that was an absolute embarrassment. If I was the one running it.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
You know, for all of them, I gave them like a 10-minute lesson, and they did their best. And honestly, for the amount of training they had and background, They did an incredible job getting videos for me, you know.
When before they set off to Tokyo, I went to the Beijing National Training Center just to get like a few photos of them before they're leaving. But there was like a restriction that day, so I wasn't allowed to go in the center. So I called Tian Fushuan. I was like, here, take my camera, go in there, take whatever you want. It's like, how do I do it? I set it onto auto, just press a button. Anything, just get anything you can. Don't worry about it.
Oh God.
And he came out with like three good photo. I was really impressed. He was like, is it good? I was like, yeah, you got one of Coach Yu smiling. That's never been done before.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Maybe he just doesn't smile when he thinks that there's no media around.
Yeah, maybe it's us. Like if someone else was taking it, he would be smiling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm always a little bit surprised, you know, when I get something usable back from people, you know. So yeah, it's definitely like a different, you know, level of, you know, standard that I hold things to when it's like me doing something that I want to be good at versus, you know, someone who really doesn't do it, you know. Now put it this way, if someone were to train weightlifting from like the age of 10 to the age of 25, and they were to train 5 or 6 times a week, and they were to be 110 kilos, and they're male and they can't snatch 130, or had never snatched 130 in their life, I would probably say that's a little bit embarrassing.
Yeah.
Just because
you start
like, yeah, you started young, you trained for 15 years, you trained for 5 or 6 days a week, like you've made a commitment to it. In the same way that I would say, oh, wait, you've been a sports photographer for 10 years, you've taken 5 million pictures, and you take pictures like this.
Yeah.
Like, that's a little embarrassing. Like you've made this commitment in your life to be doing this super routinely, and you're not good at it.
Yeah.
You know, so there's different levels of what would be considered, you know, not that good at something. Now, someone who's, you know, 42 and picked up weightlifting 2 years ago and is 110 kilos, and they snatch 2 times a week, they shouldn't be snatching 130. That's not embarrassing for them to not snatch. You know, like they picked it up late and they're doing it for fun. They're not taking it that seriously.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you know, it's different, completely different, you know, kind of worlds that the two people are in. You know, it's kind of like if you know, if you know Tian Tiao can't misses like a 170 snatch. It's like especially when he's a 96, he shouldn't miss 170. You know?
Yeah.
It's like, but we're talking about like an insane amount of weight. Like if you've ever picked up 170, you know that's a lot of weight.
You know how heavy it is, yeah.
And like we're talking about like that's embarrassing for someone to not be able to snatch 80 something kilos over, or not 80 something, but 70 something kilos over body weight. Mm-hmm. It's not embarrassing. It's only embarrassing in context of who he is and how he has lived his life to this point with so much of a commitment to weightlifting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess I just always feel like I have to put that stuff in context.
No, it's good. Yeah, it's good to explain into very detailed terms.
Yeah.
So should we have a wrap up then? Just need to have another meeting in an hour.
Well, I think this is funny because you were like, we're going to do a 30-minute podcast. I'm like,
yeah, I was not expecting to go into this in depth. Yeah.
I've never done a 30-minute podcast ever. Like every person that I've ever on a podcast with, we always set the record for like the longest podcast ever done.
Yeah. How long is this one?
I have no idea.
Didn't say anywhere. Oh, we'll find out. Well, we started at 11, so it's
almost
2 hours. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to edit them. I'm just going to post this on YouTube and like give some timestamps. I'll have to edit the one for the Chinese audience.
Like, you said you're putting it up with subtitles.
Yeah, I have to put some subtitle for the Chinese version because they always complain about me speaking English.
It'll take you like 3 or 4 days to do the subtitles for them.
Yeah, but probably I'm not going to do the whole thing, but just like key bits, like explaining like how Hookgrip started, why you guys did this, maybe the bits that's relevant to China.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, tell everyone I love China.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully like we can meet up again in Chongqing or somewhere if COVID permits.
Yeah, I mean, if I have to do a 2-week quarantine, I guess I would do it because it's senior worlds and I really would have no choice. But I wouldn't be happy with it.
Yeah. Oh, no one would be happy.
You know, I mean, like I put it this way, I wouldn't be happy with the IWF for putting us in a situation where we have to quarantine for 2 weeks. Now, if they said, hey, you're gonna fly in and
Yeah.
we're gonna like PCR test you every day,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be upset about that because that's fine. It doesn't really inconvenience me.
Yeah.
But if they're like, you have to fly in 2 weeks, sit in the hotel for 2 weeks, blah blah blah, this and that, all at your own expense, like can't really do anything. You have like Chinese internet, which is blocked and like a pain in the ass to do a lot of the work that I need to do. It's like all right, like come on, like why are you making us do this when we could just hold this in a different country and let's go to China when they don't have these rules,
Yeah.
because like once again, I have nothing against China as a destination other than all the COVID rules. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I know.
I mean, so it's like I really will not be happy.
Yeah, some cities like 21-day quarantine now. It's like, oh god. I don't know. Have you done a quarantine like ever?
No.
It's hard. I've done it twice. One from when I decided to leave the UK, and the second time after Tashkent. It was dreadful. Yeah, it really hits you around like the 10th or 11th day. You're just super bored and there's nothing you can do.
Exactly. Like that's the thing. Like I don't want to do that. That's why I don't want them to hold worlds in China if that is going to be the rule. And the thing is like I get the feeling if they were to hold worlds in China, the way it'll work is it'll be that rule for people like me, but it won't be that rule for athletes and coaches. Like they'll bring in athletes and coaches will be able to fly in and just do testing and blah blah blah, but someone like me will have to do it, and to me that's kind of bullshit. You know what I mean? That would be like it to me. It's almost like them saying, oh, these athletes and coaches, you're important for the competition. You media people, you're not important. We don't really care. You know what I mean? Because
I think they were, given how the national game was held, I think it's very possible that we all have to like quarantine. Well, we all like enter a bubble, if that makes sense. And everyone in this bubble, you're free to do whatever you want.
I mean, that's fine to me. Like I said, if they want to be strict with testing, I don't really care because it doesn't really affect me if they're strict with testing. And if they're strict with testing, then in theory, it makes it better for everyone who is in the bubble because then you're less worried about someone else giving it to you. But what I don't like is the idea of like this stratified system of you need to quarantine, you don't, you do, you don't. Like if they do that, like I'm honestly going to be annoyed with that. I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't go because I probably would go because it's senior worlds and I kind of have to, but I would go and be mad about it. Whereas if they say, okay, we're going to hold in China and everyone who's coming to the meet has to land at this certain city and like get onto a certain bus and go through this testing, and every day you need to do a PCR test or whatever, I'd be like, you know what, as annoying as that might be in some ways, like that's fun because then it's kind of like everyone's being treated equally, everyone has these rules, blah blah blah. As long as it's not like I said, something where I need to quarantine for 2 weeks and like the athletes can just fly in and do whatever, like that, then I would be more annoyed. But let's see what happens. Like let's see if they actually hold it there, what the rules are, and then we can discuss exactly if I'm annoyed with it or not.
Cool, man. Well, it's really nice talking to you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
No, that sounds good. I mean, it's nice to finally able to tell China that you guys are the people who actually made a lot of the athletes famous in the first place.
Well, I feel like we helped, but it's obviously, I can't make someone popular who isn't really good and doesn't, appeal to audiences,
Yeah.
So there's only, it's one thing to, I wouldn't say we made them famous, but we definitely helped
Yeah.
amplify it. But that's kind of two different ways to look at it. But we definitely assisted in the process or whatever.
Yeah. Cool, man. Let's call it there then. Just under 2 hours.